Okay, I have 6 o'clock. We'll call the steering committee to order. Looks like we have everyone with us. Mr. Taylor had told me he was working out of town this week and would not be able to be here. Mr. Ferguson had let me know he wasn't sure whether he would be able to be here or not. So looks like everyone else is here. Few things to go over tonight, not a big agenda, but first is to review the minutes from the April 5th meeting. You have those in front of you. Is there any corrections, revisions to those minutes? Mr. Harsh?
Move to approve the minutes.
Mr. Harsh makes a motion to approve. Mr. Ford gets a second. Any further discussion or questions on them? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Main thing that we have to review tonight, of course, we will have some, I'm sure, some questions on some other things as to kind of the progress on them. But first one is this resolution 2022-15-759. This is a resolution to redesignate the allocation of the remaining funding from the wheel balance, a portion of it, $115,000, over to paving the parking lot at the high school. We had passed resolution previously in January, I believe it was, to take whatever funds were left over from that project and apply them to the middle school roof project, which we had received approval from the comptroller's office to be able to do that. The schools have received $200,000 toward paving and coating the parking lot at the high school. They've needed an additional $115,000, and there should be enough left in that fund to be able to do that, since those funds were previously allocated or given by the public in the form of the wheel tax for the high school. It seems very fitting that we use that money for that project. That was the reasoning. This resolution, what it does is designates $115,000 of whatever's left over for that purpose, and also is agreed to by Dr. Sadfield and the school board that it would not apply to maintenance of effort. And that's written in here. And my understanding, and Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, that this will also not only just be signed off by us, but it would be signed off as well by the comptroller's office, that so that there's no doubt that this would not be included in the maintenance of effort. Is anything I left off of that, Mayor?
No, it's just, but the person who's going to sign it is actually in the local finance department of the Department of Education.
Okay, well, sorry.
But no, and the way this is written, it's already been approved that this language and everything is written with enough specificity that given the money to them, it will not count in our maintenance of effort. So that's why we had to do this resolution.
Any questions on that? Does everybody understand? And we will cover this, of course, in budget and finance next Monday night. I guess it is that we meet, or whatever Monday night it is that we meet, but for their recommendation as well. But didn't really see that education committee needed to meet on this. I don't think. I think budget finance would be sufficient to take it through the committee structure. But certainly if someone thinks that's what we need to do, we can, but we'd like to get it in so that it's taken care of with this budget. Okay. All right, that was I think the main thing. Mayor, a couple of things that in just months past, if you don't mind giving us a little update on that. I jotted down a few notes, and some of the commissioners, if you have something else, you can bring it to the table. The resale of land, how did that sale go? Did we get bids on everything? Has that been closed out? I haven't had a chance to really ask you. I apologize, but
yes, we did actually get bids. Actually got multiple bids going through the multiple rounds on every property except for one. So that one went in the first round as required by statute. So we did bring in over what the minimum bid was, which the minimum bid was to cover all the back taxes, fees, and everything due and interest. So we've actually made money on those as we sold them in the tax sale. I don't have that figure exactly what it was total in front of me, but they'll be able to pay off those. And we're in the process of right now, people are coming in, paying for them, and we're recording the deeds and getting those off our books. So that's where we're at with that. But yeah, that's been done. And once we get the last deed recorded, we'll be finished with that. There is another set of properties we're going to have to do. There was one that was missed. It just kind of got buried. And there's two on Breezy Inn that we've been having to do some legal work on because according to the tax records, we owned it, but the deed it references at the Register of Deeds office is actually between two brothers. It doesn't involve the county. So we've been having to go back and do research to see exactly how the county got it. And that's taken a little bit of time, and we're hopefully towards the end of that process. And then we'll have 3 properties go up a little bit, hopefully later this year if we get that legal issue resolved.
Do you have just a rough figure of what the amount above the minimum was, just in rounds, hundreds of thousands?
No, not hundreds of thousands. I don't have it what it would be above the minimum, but if I had to guess, it's probably somewhere around 40 is what it was total for all the properties. Again, I don't know what that would be over the minimum,
Okay.
but I think that's about what they brought total.
Okay, that's good. Okay. That's what it, yeah. Mr. Ford?
Did all the properties move okay?
Yes, sir. The only one that we had to, that as this was done under the statute, you did an initial, the Committee for Resale Land set the minimum bid. We had to print that under a form that was given to us that's required. And then you got written bids, sealed bids on top of that. There was only one property that went in that round, which means after we published that, what that high bid was, nobody raised it more than 10%. And actually on that property, nobody submitted another bid on that one whatsoever, but it was still above the minimum bid. So we made a little bit on that. All the rest of them went through 2 other rounds because after you printed what that first sealed bid was, then somebody could come in. If they raised it more than 10%, we had to then re-advertise it saying, here's what the first round bid was. Here's what that bid was. Anybody raised it more than 10%. Then you kind of went into a, for lack of a better word, is a public auction that we did in the mayor's office. And so we had almost every property other than that one had multiple bids on it and the people actually bidding in person against each other. So there was 2 or 3 properties that had a lot of interest in it, but they all sold above the minimum. And I think it was a very big learning experience. That's the first time we've ever followed that. So hopefully we'll make some adjustments and be a little bit clearer next time. But yeah, we had real good participation.
Any other questions on that? Did want to let everyone know, and the park grant that TDEC did grant us 600,000, is that official or was that just a verbal commitment on their part?
At this point, it's a verbal commitment, but it has been verified twice and they're in the process. So they had, since it changed the scope of the project and the amount of money going back up so much, they have reopened the application. We have to go back in and expand the scope and whatnot. And they're having to redraft the contracts and all this stuff to put in the increased funding. They're hoping to have that grant to us sometime by mid-August so we can sign it and then begin with the project.
Questions on that one? Anybody? Bubba, you want to tell us kind of what we did last night with insurance, or insurance committee met last night, just to kind of give everybody an update. The proposal that the consultant, what do we call him, a consultant, or what's his title?
It's a health insurance broker.
Broker, that's the word that was escaping me. Presented to us, really looked good. It was one of those things that it would benefit the employees greatly as far as the cost of their insurance, without adding any significant cost to the county and possibly even saving us money. But it's one of those things that you're fronting part of it during the year, and you don't know till you get down to the tail end of the year how much you ever used. But insurance committee decided, did not approve it yet. They decided to present it, let him present it to the employees, get their feedback on it, see whether they felt like they would be happy with it, if they would get buy-in, I guess. And then we would meet on it again to make a recommendation to the full body. So we've got that set up for the 15th. Was it 5 and 6 or 5 and 7?
It's 5 and 6:15
5 and 6.
at the community center, and and we did send out a flyer on it earlier today to the department heads and employees, letting them know that they could come to those informational sessions, and that 5 points would be there to answer any questions on the proposal. And again, that is next on Wednesday, the 15th, at the first session's at 5 and the second one is at 6:15.
We plan to tape that and make it available also for any of them that can't be here if they have questions about it as well. Just a brief presentation on his part to try to explain it, and mainly have for them to have an opportunity to ask questions and get questions answered. So really glad to see that moving forward. It looks like it will help. Had a little snafu at the pool today. I don't know whether anybody other than me, phone blew up, but I don't know. It's one of those, Mayor, I guess you can explain it as well as me, but, or better probably, because you've dealt with it, I'm sure, more than I did. Just somebody made the decision to go home, basically, and they didn't have the authority to make that decision. So nobody was there. So they decided, since nobody's here, we don't need to open. So I think we've got that corrected. I don't think that'll be happening again. Well, that was the excuse. No one was there. So, but anyway, that will be taken care of, I'm sure. So,
and I do want to address that is not a county policy about if nobody's here, you close. No, that is not a county policy, and the hours are set. We intend to abide by those hours, and we're going to make sure that that is completely understood. Now, if we have, obviously inclement weather, something like that, we'll close to do that. But, we're paid to be there. It doesn't matter if there's nobody there. There's other things you can do to address. You can clean up the pool, do things like that, but you're paid to be there, and that's what we're going to express. And I think that sentiment has already been expressed, to my understanding, but I'm sure we're going to have that conversation again and know that, no, that pool will be open during the hours it's supposed to open. And again, my office found out about it when, like Mr. Jewell, we started getting calls and Facebook comments and all this stuff. And we're trying to track down and see exactly what happened on that. But generally what Mr. Jewell said is correct from what we know at this time. And I just want to assure everybody that is not going to happen again.
things like this happen, when, I mean, it's, I think the word that comes to mind is a snafu, it just, things like that happen. Things that we have, I'm sorry. Yes, sir, Mr. Ford.
I'll bring something up that we all was told about it sometime back. I believe Mr. Woodard brought this up, asking for 2 men to be over at the fire station during the daytime. I don't know how many of you know about it, but last Wednesday, there was a fire alarm at the elementary school. Not one person showed up at the fire department. Not one. Folks, think about this. Luckily, it was a false alarm. But what's going to happen if somebody out the road here a little ways has a fire and it goes in and nobody comes out? We're sitting here with something that worries the devil out of me. Many of you know, I've said it many times, there ought to be an ambulance sitting down there all the time anyway. We're sitting here in a situation, Mr. Woodard talked a little bit about it, even asked us to consider hiring 2 people. But what are we going to do if we have a fire out here, your house, my house, mayor's house, whomever's house, and the fire alarm goes in down there and nobody shows up, and we mess around here and let somebody die because of it. I just want to bring it to your attention that frankly, I'm worried about it. And I can't blame it on one in particular, but the point is everybody works in the daytime and there's nobody down there. There's nobody to go down there. But I just want to bring it to your attention that this has happened. You know about it. Thank God it was a false alarm. But now all of you's been around here long enough and know that we have fires in the daytime just like we do at night. The wrong one, I don't know if it would put us in a negligible position or not. But if it did, you bet your britches on one thing, we're going to lose. I just want to bring it to your attention. I'm not trying to get you to do nothing one way or the other, but I'm telling you, we're sitting on a time bomb. A time bomb. I don't know what the answer is, but the man asked us in his report if we'd consider putting 2 people down there. I believe he said 5 days a week, which is 40 hours. He put that before us, and I don't think we've done anything with it, did we, Mayor? We turned it down, I think.
I had taken it out of my budget because he had never given me any indication ahead of time that this was coming. Just all of a sudden it popped up and I had legal concerns about it, and the county attorney shares those legal concerns and we are working through those right now.
Well, I guess for what it's worth, we give more money to the fire boys to make sure we had people run the ambulance. And then we got a fire department down there and can't even get people to show up. Guys, we're gonna have to really work through this thing before it comes back to bite us. I don't think
Okay,
it's the fire chief's fault.
Well, you know,
It ain't
I
the fire
appreciate
chief's fault.
you bringing it to our attention. I was aware of it. I will say, Mr. Gully, I believe you.
Yeah, I did ask to speak here on this piece. Mr. Ford, you have some clarifying information there, but I'm not sure where you got all your information, because I am 100% sure that Mr. Buckmaster showed up on that call at the elementary school. I'm running a system. I'm running a principal there for the summer camp with it. We did have a false alarm fire alarm go off. Ended up being a duct detector that had gone bad. However, with that being said, Mr. Buckmaster showed up and said, "Hey, this happens very often. Do we need to get guys out here?" He came with that reason, with that thought. Is it a false alarm or is it a real alarm? So that's maybe part of the extra information we need to know here in this case. There was a investigation into, hey, is this what needs to happen, or are we at a false alarm at this point? So there were men ready, as he said to me, ready to go if they needed us. And he walked in there, asked me that piece. We had cleared the school at that time, had a indication that we had no issue at that time. In terms of a fire, we had a false alarm. That's why no one actually came to the department at that time. So Mr. Buckmaster had actually came to the school, and I stepped there and talked to him myself. Yes, sir, 100%. We went through and had that discussion. So there's some false information that maybe you weren't given that information. I'm not trying to say you were delivering it falsely. Don't hear me wrong. But Mr. Buckmaster was at that school, walked in there. He and I talked. We had that discussion. So it was reacted upon. Things were moved in the right manner.
I agree. My understanding was that he responded to the school directly and was going to make the determination whether to roll the truck. They didn't roll the truck because they determined very quickly that it was a false alarm. We ran into a similar situation with this several years back up at the middle school, continuously having false alarms, and they replaced some parts of the panel. It's a very complicated system, and all it takes is one set of contacts getting a little dirty or whatnot for it to misread and start doing that. I don't think you've had a history of it recently doing this, have we, or not?
To my understanding, the elementary school is pretty recent and it's pretty regular,
Right.
that they have this situation going on. So it is a pretty known, occurrence that this goes off. I know Dr. Satterfield said there's quite a few afternoons, quite a few nights, late nights that he and Mr. Buckmaster, or he and one other fireman will go walk through the building to make sure everything is okay because the fire alarm goes off and there's no one, at that time. So it was something pretty regular. When Mr. Buckmaster showed up, he said, "Hey, is this another false alarm, or do we need to get trucks here right now?" That was the expectation. So in other words, we might have a system there that's showing some age, is what you might be seeing, or a system that was showing some need there in this case at this time, because it has become relatively regular from what I understand.
Then
Like you said in the
it
past.
probably does need to be checked out and possibly replaced, or certain circuits within it replaced. And I'm sure that the school board will address that. I know they will. There's no doubt about that. That's one thing that the fire marshal's office, when they do the inspections, the annual, biannual inspections of the school, they check the logs to see how frequently that alarm has went off, and they will tell them, you got to fix this. So I'm sure that will be addressed. But thank you for sharing that with us. Appreciate it. I think there are, several things floating around, a lot of misinformation floating around about our fire department and what's happening, what's not happening. I'm sure some of it's accurate. I'm sure some of it's very inaccurate. And I do know that there are some things that we're trying to look at changing or addressing. And I just want everyone to be assured that this is not being ignored, that it is something that's being taken seriously and it's being looked at. And that's kind of where we're at with it right now. Mr. Gully.
I would add one thing. We had a instance here, been about 3 months ago, where we I had a contractor doing some cleanup on Fort Blunt on a piece of property for me, and doing some brush cleanup, and was doing some debris burning at that point, and had a neighbor call because there was a worry about some embers at night. You see some embers come up. Within 15 minutes, there were 12 guys standing there on the scene with a fire truck. So they moved very quickly that night. I mean, honestly, it was a very fast moving group. It looked to me as if things were running very smoothly. I thought that was very successful movement of things. And we're talking Fort Blunt, it's a little ways outside of town, and it moved very well. I was quite pleased to see the number show up in that short amount of time.
I don't think they're having any problem except in the daylight hours. That's when they seem to have a problem getting anybody there much. Or at least that's what I'm being told.
Well, like I say, it's being looked into, and there will be some meetings addressing some of the things that you have concerns about in the near future, I'm sure. So let's just let it go with that. One thing I'd like to explain fully, if you look down under items in committee, you see mining ordinance has been sent to Codes and Zoning Committee. We did not have any knowledge, or I had no knowledge, that this was anywhere ready to come before the commission until I received the agenda, and it was on the agenda, and it had been sent over from the Planning Commission. We had not had a steering committee last month because we didn't think there was anything to meet for. So I will take full responsibility for it, made the decision that it needed to go to this committee. Most all of our ordinances in any way go to the appropriate committee, be it Budget and Finance or Codes and Zoning, and send it over there, asked Mr. Gully to set a meeting, and he's been trying to gather the information, which it's been a little hard to get some of the information that we needed to be able to have a meeting put together and have all the information before us. I had went back and looked at the Planning Commission minutes and saw that they had been presented by GNRC with at least two possibilities of how this ordinance should be drafted. And I certainly am not questioning their decision, but just wanted to know from informational purposes what those two options were. And Ms. Baker was good enough to supply that information to me. When I looked at them, I saw that there really wasn't a lot of substantial difference between the two. They were virtually the same. But I wanted everyone to understand, because I'm being accused of trying to slow walk this because I don't want it to happen. And that is absolutely not the truth. You know, it was a timing issue. Had they let us know that this was going to be coming out of there on that Monday night, we would have tried to have a committee ready Tuesday or Wednesday to look at it. But I had no foreknowledge of this other than I knew that they had been working on it for several months. I think it had been in planning for at least 4 months, 3 months, 3 or 4 months. And so I didn't know that there was any rush for it. And I just thought we would take our normal avenue of it going through committee. So that's how and why it went to committee. And I did ask, I don't remember if it was at work session or at one of the budget meetings, but I asked that, you know, we take it off of the agenda and send it to committee if there was no objections. And I didn't hear any objections. And so that's basically what I did and why. And now we have someone we have found out subsequently that is asking to put a rock quarry down on Highway 231 down in the 6th District. And so there will be a lot of controversy about this. I want everyone to be assured that there are things within our ordinance that address this. It just doesn't address it in the detail that this proposed ordinance would. So it's not like there's nothing there. There are things there. And so I think that we can trying to set a date for this committee meeting. Hopefully we can have their recommendations on it to come back before our next commission meeting. Hopefully we'll be able to do that. Mr. Harsh, I know you're involved in this very heavily and certainly like to hear from you, but I believe Ms. Atwood had asked.
It's okay, you can go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay.
I observed today that there was a banner put up on 231 and it reflected no quarry, and was asking the people of the community to show up at the planning commission meeting. And since this has become knowledge in just the last few days, I've had more calls than I've had in the last 8 years of being a commissioner. It has really upset the people there. They're terribly concerned about the blasting issues and the heavy trucks on the road and the blind drive with the dips and the curves where the trucks would have to come out of, and the environmental impact on the river and the wildlife refuge that's in that area. And it's not a sparsely populated area anymore. There's subdivisions and houses everywhere, and the people are just adamant against this, and they're afraid it's going to damage their property values. And I've never seen anything take hold as quickly as this resistance has. People already going door to door handing out informational sheets that tell when the meetings are going to be, to been asking people to attend. So just kind of what the feedback that I've just gotten in the last 2 days.
I assure you, I've had the same calls. I don't know whether many of y'all have, but I don't want anyone to think that what happened with this going to committee was in any way to try to slow down this process. It was to make sure that the process that we've set in place works. I mean, in my mind, this comes over in a week's time to be up for us to vote on without us having any foreknowledge of it, look at it in committee, whatnot. that looks like to the public that you're trying to ram something through under the radar, so to speak. So that was as much my thinking on this, was to try to protect the public and the public interest, and to have time for this to be vetted properly and make sure that whatever we were doing is what we needed to do and was all that we needed to do. It wasn't an indictment against the Planning Commission that we didn't trust them or whatnot, but the Planning Commission rules are rules from this body. They are not the Planning Commission's rules. We adopt those ordinances, and it's up to them to apply those ordinances to what they do. And we try to be very respectful of that body. We've got some really, really good people on that body, but there's two functions here. Number one, they weren't elected. Two of you were, but the majority of you weren't. You're appointed bureaucrats, county officials, county, however you want to look at it. So the public is looking to the elected officials on these issues. So that's why I felt like it needed to go through committee before it came to the full body. So I take full responsibility for that decision. You can agree with me, you can disagree with me. I'm not asking for support. I'm just trying to offer an explanation as to the why publicly, so everyone involved with this will know the why. Okay, so that's where we are with that. Is there any other, Ms. Atwood, did you have something that you wanted to say to that?
No, I was just wanting to know if anybody else had heard from concerned citizens in regards to that, and obviously everyone has.
I assume if you haven't, you will. And I'm sure you'll hear a lot about it. I'm sure this courtroom will be packed. It's not, this is one of those things that's necessary and needed, without a doubt. But there are places that are better suited for this type of activity, possibly. And that's what has to be decided. It's not whether this is something that is this needed and is this a good place for it, basically. Mr. Noller, you've been involved with all that was going on with planning. I'd love to hear from you.
Well, we did work on it several months and had finally passed, you know, for it to be sent on for us to vote on it, for the county commission to vote on it. I'm mixed up about where this property is. Ain't that where they wanted to put a junkyard, and everybody raised Cain about the pulling out on the road? Now everybody that's called me is concerned about big trucks coming out on that road.
It is and it isn't.
Okay, that's what I thought
It
it was.
would be an adjacent property to the property that was proposed for the other. But yes, it's the same general area, same,
You might know Mr.
within
Kirby.
100
Out of town
feet.
this week. I said, you might know Mr. Kirby out of town. I gotta chair the meeting.
Might be a good night to be sick, David. Mr. Gully.
Mr. Julian, as chair of that Codes and Zoning Committee, I've done quite a bit of looking back here the last couple of days and time here. And as best I can see, the first time we as a county commission received any word of that was May the 24th. I could be incorrect in that date, but that's the first time I can ever find where I had a copy of this ordinance in my hands and available for me to go through. Now, as I'm looking at May the 24th, that is a Tuesday. That is the day after, I believe that is the day after the commission meeting. Is that correct? I can't find it anywhere else in my documents before May 24th.
I have the first email sent to you on Monday, May 16th at 10:22 a.m. It says to Landon Gully, Dwight Jewell, Stephen Chambers, John Kerr, Sam Edwards. And then you got another one on June 2nd.
Did that go
It went to your county email address.
from Miss Amy Thomas?
Yes, sir.
That was the ordinance?
What I'm looking at shows 5 attachments, has the ordinance, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 sets of planning commission minutes.
I think I do remember getting that and thinking that was planning commission minutes at that point in time. I did know it was on our agenda but I didn't know that it was going to be on the agenda when we decided not to have the steering committee, is all I'm saying. I'd have to go back through these. I haven't tried to piece this together. I was just giving you my remembrances of it. I do know that Mr. Noller did question me after that meeting why I wanted to take it off, and I said it just needs to go to committee like everything else. Is that what I told you? That's my remembrances of what I told you. Okay, so it wasn't certainly anything to try to circumvent or delay anything. Sometimes, you get, things just, there again, get lost in the shuffle. I don't see that email, but I'm sure I got it. The thing I'd like to say is, we all get lots of emails. I'm juggling 3 email accounts, and I know the mayor probably gets 500 a day. I get at least that many, and I'm sure many of us do as well. So, Mr. Gully.
As I'm looking back through mine, I got a Parks and Rec on May 16th from Miss Amy Thomas. The first mention I had I do have the June 2nd, but I do not. And I'm looking through both emails. She often sends to my TC schools, and she often sends to my government. I went straight to my government as well after you just said that. And I have a May 16th, which is the Parks and Rec. I'm not trying to pull out anything here. I just want everybody to understand that when I'm looking at this information, trying to go back through it, and as we're seeing, it's not a trying to slow play or a trying to pass something under. We don't have that information that I saw, or somehow that you say it's on May 16th. It was sent to me. I was attached to me. I don't have that email to my Travis County government email on May 16th. I do have one. The first record I can find is May 24.
I've got May 18th, the planning minutes from Mary Ann, and the Google calendar from Amy, and I don't have anything else but I think. But anyway, it's needless to say, that was what transpired, whether it should have or not. That's what transpired, and that's why, and that's where we're at with it. And y'all should have received a copy of that resolution in your packet, so you look it over and see if you like the wording and things. I have spent a great deal of time with it. I have absolutely no problem with it and the way it's worded. I think I've been told that Mr. Beller had looked it over or was in the process of looking it over as well. Is that correct, Mayor?
I can't say that he has completely looked it over. I can say he's probably at least in the process of looking it over. That's something he would have talked to Sam directly on that.
Okay. And I have not had any conversations with Sam about it, other than he questioned where it was at in the zoning ordinances sometime last year. And I think that's when they were starting this process of looking into it to see if something else needed to be done. Mr. Ford.
Mr. Noller, did you say that the planning commission basically had approved it and sent it on to the county court?
Excuse me, he decided to send it on to the other committee, but we had voted that night when we had our last meeting to send it on for us to vote on it, for the county commission to vote on it. So, and then he said, well, we're going to send it on to the other committee. And I did question it a little bit, but just a little bit.
My thoughts, it was a very complicated issue that needed to be really looked at and vetted to make sure it was what we wanted to do and how we wanted to do it. And the last thing I wanted was to get it up here and we start having all kinds of questions about it. And the question come up, has this been to committee? What do they think about it? Well, no, then it's shot down. It's gone. It ain't happening. And with no foreknowledge that anything was in the works, certainly there was no reason not to think that that was the case, but that's where we're at. I'm sure we beat this to death. So, Mr. Clarity,
Who owns the property where they're talking about doing this?
I have no idea. I looked at the property card. The man that owns it is listed in Murfreesboro.
Exactly where is it? Is it down next to Car Lane or is it?
It's between Robertson Lane and River Crest, the big log house that sits up on top of the hill right there in
Used to
those
be-
sharp curves.
Used to be the Morton's.
Used to be
house.
Morton's. Yeah, it used to be Morton's property.
So is that piece
There's-
of property?
There's two, yes, there's two tracks there. There's one toward the highway and then there's another track between there and the river. Have no idea exactly which part of the property this is proposed on. I think that's one thing that planning is supposed to be looking at is they're supposed to be presenting a site plan. This meeting, I think.
I'm not sure on
Okay.
if it's a site plan or if it's to be rezoned. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure one way or the other, but anyway, they have it on their agenda, I think, for Monday night. Yes, but you know, it's posted as a public hearing, but it's not real clear what the public hearing is for. Is it for rezoning or is it for a special exception to do this?
It's neither a rezoning or a special exception because in 2003, the county commission removed mining from the M1, which was the only one at that time. They removed it when LES was coming in. And that was in January 23rd, 2001. And so you didn't have any districts for mining, and the planning commission sent an ordinance in on November of 2010 to put language back in there into the M2, but it failed in first reading at the county commission. So this is the first time since 2010 that this putting mining back in the zoning ordinance has been brought to the county commission.
Mr.
So am I
Bowman?
correct in hearing that at this point, there is no zoning available for mining in Charleston County?
It is not designated to any district.
Yeah, it's not designated to potential district. There is language in there talking about how mines have to work and how they're regulated, but there is no particular zoning that states this as a use. That, like I said, that was removed in 2003 and has never been put back in there.
I had talked with former chairman of the planning commission, Mr. Bowen, about this at length, and he went back through his notes. I think where this has gotten out of whack is exactly what the mayor said. They were making an attempt to designate an M1 and M2 district instead of just an M1 industrial district. And this had gotten moved to the heavy industrial M2 district. And for whatever reason, that rezoning effort or that attempt at clarifying those districts did not pass. So I think the assumption by everyone is it's still in the M1, but it doesn't read that it is. And that was possibly his recollections, my recollection of my conversation with him. But I think the mayor is absolutely correct on the timeline of what happened when and why it's not there. But we can go back and I'm sure look at all those things too. That's the type of information I think that we need to know and have absolute knowledge of before we go into making a decision on this.
Thank you for that clarification. That is good information. I've been trying to research back. That is difficult to research back to those pieces and the time that is consumed to get to those pieces. Mayor, I appreciate you presenting that to us for the 2003. I probably could have watched Planning Commission minutes and that might have came out in their minutes at some point in time, but at some time back. With that stated, we are in an attempt to try to set a Codes and Zoning Committee meeting, and it will be discussed in that point. We certainly want the public's input, and we certainly want to have a good discussion around the pieces that we have in front of us. No one likes to think that something may be negative in front of to impact them or impact their area. And I certainly don't disagree with that. What I would say is I would hope everyone would trust that the officials that you put into place, elected for those places, are going to certainly do their due diligence to look through, find the information, and do the best they can to make sure that we protect the public in all manners that we can. But everyone, an owner of a piece of property has put forth an ask. That's why it's come to the table. That's why we get the opportunity here to go look and see what's happening for it. I'm not saying for or against in any way here in form or fashion. I want to look at the pieces, get my understanding around it. That's what I'm saying at this part. But please understand that we're definitely not trying to push something through or under a table here in any way, form, or fashion. I am great to hear that, because I've been trying to look through it myself to see where mining was even available in the county and what zoning it would be in at this current time, and had not located that.
Well, I've prepared a timeline and probably about a 60-page document that I've actually got right here, because I did research on this for the majority of yesterday. I actually had to go back and find a zoning regulations book from the 90s to see what was actually in there, because between 1997 and 2003, it wasn't changed. And so I found one that was in that range, and I found that mining was in there as a special exception. It was actually C5 prior to 2003. And then at that time, the county commission removes all but one special exception in M1 and creates the M2, but they didn't put mining in the M2s. They didn't put it in there anywhere. And then, like I said, the planning commission sent a thing up in November 2010 to try to put it back in there under the M2, but it failed on first reading at the county commission. And I can send you, I drafted a timeline referring to pages in this document I put together, and I can send that to you, and you can go back and research it. And it's got the relevant minutes that I could find from the planning commission, county commission, as well as relevant parts of the zoning resolution and several other documents.
I'd certainly appreciate to get that information from you if you don't mind. I mean, you've got the opportunity, it seems to have had taken the time, and I appreciate you taking that time to go through it. I will state, I did, as I researched some more, you're right, on the 16th, we received an email which had it on page 68 of that document. I didn't get to page 68, I guess, in the time I had read through that ordinance. It was not attached as an ordinance on the first one I received, but you are correct. We had received it prior to May 24th.
Mr. Nolan?
This is what's on the agenda. Site plan by Hunters Point Quarry LLC for the LANCE property for 147.55 acres at 1250 Highway 231 South, map 041, parcel 060501 for mining and quarrying activities in the 6th district. That's what's on the agenda.
Okay, that's where we're at with this. So everybody knows where we're at and why we got there, how we got there. It may have been a breakdown in communication. I can't say that one way or the other, but I take full responsibility for it going to committee. That's my job. All right, there's nothing further on that. Budget, of course, we're going to have our budget committee meeting. We've put together basically best we can budget figures for 2.5% and 5%, and of course we have 0% that was built in as well for us to look at. That's the first thing that we need to decide. I probably should have brought that as the first order of business in our last meeting. I didn't think that we would get as bogged down and as lengthy in some of the other things as we did and run out of time. So absolutely, that's the first thing that we need to decide. Once we decide that, then all the other pieces, parts basically are going to fall in place. And so if you want to look through that, go through that, that's the biggest issue. We do not believe that we know that the 0% and the 2.5% would neither one incur a tax increase on the property tax rate, that we can incorporate that within the funds that are available. 5% would necessitate a property tax increase. Best estimate would be 3 to 4%. We should be getting numbers, absolute numbers on penny value from Mr. Potts right away, since Board of Equalization has concluded their work. I think my understanding, his preliminary, was that it would be about what was presented, or possibly 0.5% to 1% more. Was that your understanding, Mayor? Am I off base on that?
As far as the penny value, he said he does think that would go up a little bit. I didn't have an exact number on it. He didn't either. That would go up a little bit from what was presented originally, and that the penny value would be somewhere between 193 and 196.
So that's what we will be dealing with in our budget committee, hopefully, so we can get this budget put to bed for this year, so we don't have to have continuing resolutions going into next year. Are there any questions on that at this point? Okay. Schools, I think we have worked out. We passed the first school's budget. Dr. Satterfield took it upon himself to go back and in the school board to change that because of the $115,000 that was needed for the paving of the parking lot. We felt, we had assured him that thought we knew exactly where we were able to come up with that money. And I don't know why he felt it necessary to do that, but he did. And, but we have approved their original budget. And I think that with this other resolution that we're, presenting here, that should take care of what their needs were and their request from the very beginning. And I hope that's where we land on this. That's not my decision. That's certainly everyone's decision. But that's kind of where we're at this point on it. Is there anything come up on budget that somebody wants to question, or you think, if there is, please let me know so we can address it and have it on the agenda in the budget and finance meeting to look at it.
Do you have wheel tax on it?
To refund the wheel tax, a wheel tax resolution? No, sir.
Yeah, the wheel tax is gone, and best I can figure on what we're losing, somewhere around $30,000 a month till it's reinstated. It's that much a month. I don't know how long it's gonna take to get anything done on it, but.
We may be losing that amount, but we're losing that amount for a purpose that's no longer there.
I know.
So we're not really losing it. It's not like you're having to make it up from somewhere else. It's just, it's not coming in because the stated need for it is gone. That's over. If we want to have another wheel tax for another purpose, if you want to write a resolution, any commissioner can write a resolution. Write a resolution. Tell us how much you want and what you want it for, and put it before the body. I mean, I can't tell you right now how much of a wheel tax we need and exactly what it's going to fund or not fund or where it needs to go. I know we've talked about it, and there are thoughts as to that we need to do it. And I think the public will understand that it's a fair way to raise revenues. And I'm certainly not against it, but I want to have a reason for it. And I want to know that whatever we do, we don't have to go back and redo in a year's time simply because we found out it wasn't enough. I mean, that's just, but no one has put forth a resolution to do it, or a resolution to send it to referendum. And certainly anyone that wants to do that's welcome to. I see the need for it. I do. I've spoke for it. I think people in the public that are speaking in favor of it sees the wisdom of raising the revenues that way. I think they're maybe a little bit thinking $40, and we're knowing, all of us know that's not going to be enough to make a dent in what we've got ahead of us. So that's why I don't want us to come in there and the people think that we're talking about a $40 wheel tax when we know that that ain't going to do it. But we don't know what it's going to need to be, whether it be 80, 100, I don't know, 5,000. I don't know. You know, I'm throwing numbers because we really don't know. And we're in the process of trying to get, it's a process. And until we know what we need to do, where, and have a better idea of what it's going to cost, then we can better have figures to make rational decisions on how we're going to fund it, whether it's all here, a part here, a part here, and a part here, and a part here, which is more than likely the way it's going to wind up being. But we're still a good long way away from that. Let it sunset. Let the people realize that the promise we as a commission made to them 20 years ago, that when that school was paid for, it would end, that we are people of our word, and the damn thing did end. Now, if we need to do it for something else, I'm all on board with that. But I want the people to absolutely know that when we told them that it would end, it ended. And if I'm wrong in thinking that way, you tell me, and we'll talk about it. But that's why right now, the ink isn't even dry. You're not even a week into it ending, and you're already wanting to start something else, and that just doesn't look good. When you can't even tell anybody how much you have to have, what you're going to do with it, where. Let's give it some time. Let's find out what we need, and then we'll address it. I won't be here. I'm sure I won't be here, so it's easy for me to say. But I hope I'm still involved in that process enough to help with that process. But I probably said way too much and said things I shouldn't have said and used words I shouldn't have used, and I apologize for that. But that's where I'm at. Anybody else? Mr. Ford.
Mayor, do we have any idea further along as to what this project could possibly cost?
I'm not going to give you an estimate because I have no idea. With the cost, the way costs are shot up right now, and you're talking about a jail's more expensive per square foot to build, given all the security and everything you got to put into it. I'm not going to hazard a guess at this point, because you're also going to have to buy land. We don't have a single tract of land large enough for this facility, with possible and giving you enough land to expand it in the future without having to buy more. So at this point, I couldn't give you a guess.
Is it not possible to put that at the end of the existing Justice Center?
There is a gas main running through there, and it's also on the floodplain. We don't let the public build in the floodplain, and we shouldn't build in one either. Get you in all kind of other environmental concerns. Where we originally looked at putting it at was actually in a floodway, not a floodplain, and that was going to be a headache. And I've talked to TDEC, and they said, yes, you can build in a floodplain, but it's going to be a long process, and there's a lot of legal hoops and all this stuff you're going to have to jump through. And plus, given that putting it right here next to the creek where it is in the floodplain, that we do know it floods and has flooded several times, it'd be better to look somewhere that is outside of floodplain, given the sensitive nature of this facility.
The other issue with that, other than the gas line and things, is parking. It can be moved, but what's it going to cost to move it? It's not just a line, it's a main. It's a gas main. They had to bore for 400 feet to go under the creek to the other side of the creek. It cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to move that line. Then you have the question, okay, we put a building in there. We try to shoehorn a building in like we did with the one across the street. Try to make it fit in something that's not enough room for it. You're taking all your parking. Where's your parking gonna be? Is it for sale? What's it gonna cost? It just sold for $88,000. I'm just saying that's all the issues. That's the what ifs. You know, you ask why, that's the why. Sure. And we can condemn land somewhere else that's more suitable and take it. You've got some good land that we might want to condemn some of yours and put it in yours. I'm just saying it's, until we know exactly how large a facility, we're trying to move this forward in a logical, methodical way. And so that we're not overlooking something, we're not making knee-jerk decisions on things that we wind up doing something that's not what we really need to do.
I just don't like wheel tax will pay for it.
It's not.
No way.
No, but it will help pay for it. It could help the lion's share of it. Mr. Harsh, did you want to? I'm so close to it, you can't believe me. Was that a motion to, Mr. Mayor, I believe has something else?
Just one other thing, that document I mentioned earlier on the mining with the timeline, I've already sent that to all your email addresses. So if you want to look at that, it's there.
Thank you. We really appreciate that. I didn't know you had done that. I appreciate you doing it sincerely.
I did it after we discussed it. I did it sitting here. So you just received it probably about 4 or 5 minutes ago.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Harsh?
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second by Mr. Gully. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you for your time and attention.